Welcome to another episode of Depression Ain't It. I'm Chanel, and today we are with our wonderful guest, renowned life coach Steve Bacon. I'm so thankful for you being here, and I'm just so inspired by your story, and I really would like to share that with my audience. And yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And there's a specific way I always introduce myself. If people watch my videos or hear my audios, it's just I go, "What's up, family? It's your coach Steve Bacon." Okay, now we can start. My
Love
tag.
it.
It's my tag. What do I do? It's my tag. It's been my tag for like 8 years. What do I do?
I love it. I love it. And I know in your program, you help heal people within 4 hours, which is incredible. But
If they're willing.
before we even get there, like I really want to talk to you about how we even got to this point. And you went through a lot of things before you turned 20.
Yes. Yeah, my life up until 20 was very interesting. And just to give the listeners and viewers the Reader's Digest version, uh, I was born in 1984, right at the beginning of the crack epidemic here in the United States. My mom got addicted to crack 6 months after I was born. As a result, I went to 14 different schools growing up, bounced around from house to house, and always in and out of crack houses as a kid. Left alone sometimes. It was interesting. Um, got molested when I was a child. When I was 8 years old, my father showed up out of the clear blue sky. Nobody told me this man was coming to get me. He just shows up at my grandmother's door and says, "You're coming to live with me." And this was a defining moment in my life that I'll talk about later. But
But wait, so can I interrupt you?
yeah,
Sorry, before we even get to what happened at that stage, what what do you think the reason was your mother started doing crack?
well, here's the thing. Crack in 1984 is no different than Molly or weed today. It was the new drug. No one knew in 1984 that crack would end up creating all of these vacant parents and people would chase that dragon for 30 years at a time.
Yeah.
Crack in and of itself is just on a whole nother level because crack is one of those drugs where you get instantly high. With weed, you wait a few minutes and then you'll start to feel it, right? But crack is instant. Soon as you take it in, the minute you begin to blow it out, you just went to a whole nother fucking stratosphere. So that level of dopamine released in somebody's brain, they start chasing that dragon. And my mother had an addictive personality, period. She was also going through a major heartbreak with my father. And so she was at a party. My mother, at the time where she started crack, she was in college playing basketball. She went to a party. It was offered to her. It's the new thing. And then boom, there it is. And I wanted to make that distinction because people pass so much judgment over folks who become addicts. And one of my clients is a nonprofit where we rehabilitate people coming out of prison and off drugs. That's one of my loves that I've been doing for the last almost 5 years. But the thing is that there's nothing wrong with people who get addicted to drugs. They just found a different coping mechanism that is not much more harmful than a lot of other coping mechanisms. If you're addicted to sex or porn, you're addicted. If you're addicted to gambling, you're addicted. That causes issues, right? Some people are addicted to violence. Some people are addicted to anger. Some people are addicted to chaos.
Yes.
They are addicted to their own chemical reactions within their body. So people don't have enough information to judge other people who have addictions. But specifically with crack, it was no different than the kids that are in college right now trying shit.
Yeah.
It's no different. They just didn't know it was going to cause that much damage. Can you imagine someone offering you a drug and say, "Hey, listen, Chanel, just by the way, I'm going to offer you this drug and it's going to fucking destroy everything in your life." Would
That's
you
definitely
take
not
it?
a selling point. Absolutely
It's not
not.
a selling point. But it
Right.
was, hey, here's this new thing and you get instantly high. It's like cocaine, but better because that's all crack is. It's another form of cocaine. So that's how my mother got started with crack. And my mother, God rest her soul, uh, she was like, I wanted to be a functional crackhead. Because I used to ask my mom, I say, why you never stayed in the programs? And she said, because y'all wanted me to get sober. I was fine. Hello.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna repeat that because there's some people who may be listening to this, or this can be cut into a clip for someone who needs to hear it. My mother made it very clear. We wanted her to get sober. She was okay with her lifestyle. She wanted to be a functional crackhead. She said, I wanted to know, how can I feel this feeling and live a normal life? So she would literally go to meetings and all this other stuff just to try to learn how to live a normal life while still smoking crack. She wanted to be functional. Like there's functional alcoholics, there's
Yes.
functional heroin addicts.
Yeah.
There are people who shoot up heroin right there at work. Nobody knows.
Yep.
Right? There's functional potheads. So there's functional everything. So she literally just wanted to be. I'm not having no right to judge that, even though as a kid I did. But in retrospect, now being the man I am now, okay, got it. Makes sense.
Oh, that's intense. That's it.
And to
So,
be honest, the relationship with my mother changed when I stopped wishing that she was someone that she wasn't.
wasn't. How long did that take?
Well, we're going to get to that, but it took
Okay.
up until I was about 28.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was, how, you said you moved a lot.
Yeah.
Is that when you got molested?
No, it was actually
When you
uh
moved in with your father?
no, it was in a family home.
It was in a family home?
Yeah. To protect their identity, I never talk about who it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the why were you moving a lot? What was that for?
Well, one, again, my mother and I, it was just bouncing around. I mean, she was on crack, but I was still with her. She was still taking care of me as
And
best
you
as
were the
she
only
could.
child?
I was my mother's only child.
Okay.
And so we moved around a lot for that reason. And then when my father showed up in the picture and I went to live with him, we moved around a lot because he just couldn't sit still. He was always bouncing from relationship to relationship. So we would or opportunity to opportunity. So we just never sat still. I don't think I've even lived in the same place for more than 2 years until this day.
Oh, wow.
I just
So you've
I
just
get
taken.
antsy and want to go
Okay. Wow.
try something new. So I think that because that's the way my childhood was,
Yeah.
I'm still like that to this day where even every 90, my wife and I go on like 5 vacations a year. Every 90 days I need to be somewhere else.
Well, that's a dream. That is
Yeah.
a dream.
But that's a created life, a life that I designed
Yeah.
to be able to do that. We can get into that later on as well,
Yeah, of course.
uh, but yeah, that moving around a lot still affects me till this day.
Yeah, it's just interesting listening to your story because we were born the same year.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, so
Wow.
my experience growing up being in England compared to your experience in the crack epidemic is just interesting. It's just really it's shocking
Wow.
to hear that's how deep it affected it, you know? You were
Yeah, I
affected.
mean, it tore the Black community apart. It really did. And honestly, everyone did the best they could with what resources and knowledge they had at the time.
Sounds quite purposeful for me to me,
Mhm.
but that's a whole nother story. So your dad took you in. He said, "You're not living like that anymore. We're gonna go do our own thing."
Yeah,
Did
well,
you
the reason
see your mother still? Did you still see your mother while that was
and
happening?
that is the reason why I said this was a defining moment in my life.
Mhm.
Because my mother sometimes when she would go off on these binges, she would drop me off at my grandmother's house. Well, this was just like any other time she dropped me off at my grandmother's house, except this Chico DeBarge looking dude showed up the next day. If I ever
Okay.
showed you, girl, if I ever showed you a picture of my dad, I promise you, the man looked like Chico DeBarge. And uh, so I had no idea who he was.
Okay.
Like, I don't consciously remember him, this is my father. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he says, "You coming to live with me?" And I'm like, "What you talking? What do you mean I'm coming to live with you?"
Who are you?
Right. And no one said anything to me. My mother didn't say anything to me. My grandmother is just sitting there watching this all happen. And so no one's explaining to this 8-year-old child. I want y'all to pay attention to this because I'm going to come back to it later. Because you asked me, how do I help people heal so quickly? Right?
Yeah.
To come back to this story later as an example. So pay attention. No one told this 8-year-old child what was happening. Because in the Black community, there's this dumbass rule that I don't need to explain myself to a child.
Yeah.
But that's only because we don't understand how the human mind is developed.
Right.
If you don't tell me what this means, you're going to leave it up to an 8-year-old who's maybe been consciously alive for 3 years to decide what this means. So he even gave me a whooping that day for being
That
right at my
day,
grandma's house. Girl, at my grandma's house for being disrespectful to him because I was saying I ain't going nowhere with you.
man, that
And
must have
so we were
created.
already off to a bad start, right?
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
like, you putting your hands on me? I don't even know you. And I'm looking at my grandma like, you really just letting this all happen? And where the hell is my mama? And why she didn't tell me this was happening? So needless to say, he took me out and I developed a staunch hatred for my mother at that point because I felt like she chose drugs over me and was too much of a coward to tell me,
Mhm.
right? So I didn't really talk to my mother after that. And I treated her like less than a human being for almost 20 years. I was angry because how does an 8-year-old process that? They don't want me anymore.
But I'm sure you wasn't just angry at your mother. You must have been angry at your grandmother as
Oh,
well. And
absolutely.
yeah.
Whenever your mind experiences that level of trauma, that the deep amount of distress, right? Emotionally, your mind takes a snapshot of whatever caused that trauma and then develops a strategy in order for you not to ever put yourself in that position ever again. So one of the things I ask my coaching clients in our very first call is what emotion do you avoid at all costs? Not the one that you just don't like, but the one that will shut you down. Because that's the one that you see coming a mile, you see the situation coming a mile away and you whoop, you spin the other way and go the opposite direction, right? So for me, it was abandonment. Because how does an 8-year-old again process that? For the last 8 years, I'm new to this earth. All I've had is these two women protecting me, feeding me, clothing me. And with no warning, get moved off to someone else who turned out to be more like a tyrant than anything else. So it's not you even sending me to, in my 8-year-old mind, you're not even sending me to a better environment. You're sending me to a tyrant. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I wanted to ask you, the environment you lived in with your mother and your grandmother, was it very loose in a sense, like you had a lot of freedom?
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
got
yeah.
away with a
Because
lot of things.
yeah, I grew
I
up
could see
really fast.
them really wanting to send you with your dad because you need this certain kind of discipline, you need a man around, that type of thing.
So
If that
funny
was the
enough,
reasoning.
so let's fast forward. So let me do this because what you're asking me is where all the lessons are. So let me fast forward through the story and then I can come back if
Gotcha.
you don't mind. So that way
Yeah,
it all makes sense, right?
right.
So I go to live with my dad. We bounce around. Um, at 14, my dad and I get into a huge fight. I tell my cousin I'm going to kill him. I don't know if my cousin told him or not. My dad says he never told him. Whatever it is, I was planning on killing my father. Like it was at that level of anger, right? And I went back to live with my grandmother at 17, graduated from high school, took off to the military because I believed if I got away from everything, then everything would be okay. Well, unfortunately, wherever you go, there you are, and so did all my trauma go
Mhm.
with me.
Yes.
I married the first girl who said she loved me
Oh,
at
wow.
17 years old. We were 17 when I proposed.
She was in the
And
military with you.
yep, my grandmother had just passed, and my grandmother passed when I was in my tech school for military, like almost right after boot camp. And I just kind of unraveled. My grandmother was the glue still holding me together. So as soon as my grandmother passed, not even a couple of weeks later, I proposed to this girl. And everything was great until she said she loved me. And all of a sudden, we got married, and I turned into a completely different person. I became jealous, angry, abusive. Uh, I physically, mentally, and emotionally abused her. And it took about 6 months, maybe a year, for her to finally get the courage to leave. And when she did, I took a loaded gun, put it in my mouth, and pulled the trigger because I wanted her and everyone else that was abandoning me to have to live with the pain and the thought that this is because of you. And
There's so much.
the only thing that saved me was God because I fired the gun and it didn't go off.
It backfired.
Pulled the trigger.
It just, wow.
It just did not do anything. And it was instant regret. I realized in that moment that I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how to live. And I prayed for things to get better. I ended up in anger management. They took my gun away from me. She divorced me. And so I just started drinking. I didn't want to die, but I also didn't know what to do with all this pain. And so I started drinking to get drunk. And I somewhere around 18 and a half at this point, and find myself at a party and got in trouble and ended up a felon. So now I'm 19 years old. I'm divorced, attempted suicide, drinking problem, in anger management, and now a felon. So I did what any rational human being would do. I married the second girl who said she loved me at 20 years old and really kind of repeated the process, unfortunately. But it was right around that time where I met this guy named Hank who introduced me to personal development. He introduced me. He gave me a ride home from the courtroom, and I'll never forget. And it was right around when John Legend came out with "Ordinary People." Just to give you the time frame, it was like right because I remember that was the song playing in his car when we got in. And he said, "Young man, if you just change what you see about how you see yourself and what you believe about yourself, everything would change." And I didn't know what he meant, but I knew two things. One, I didn't want to live like a felon, you know, with welfare and all that other stuff. And I wasn't doing anything illegal because that's just who I wasn't that kind of person. And two, I didn't want to die. So the only other option was this. He said, if you become an entrepreneur, you can write your own ticket, but the what level you succeed at as an entrepreneur is completely dependent on who you become as a man. And so he introduced me to personal development, and that started this 18-year fascination that I've been on, where I've invested over $300,000 in myself, learned from some of the best teachers in the world, completely healed from my past, changed the relationship with my mother. We had an amazing relationship before she died. My father and I are like two little schoolgirls now, constantly calling each other, and he just met his grandson for the first time this past August in Hawaii. And so him and I have an amazing relationship now. Been married to my wife now for a few years. Never laid a hand on her besides the bedroom, if you know what I mean. Uh, Built a global coaching business, um, serving some of the most amazing human beings in the world. It is all I do is supports me and my wife's complete lifestyle, which is amazing. Became an author and have changed thousands of lives from different stages and different platforms. And it's incredible. Like my life is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And now I'm able to use all my past in my work. I use it as
Yeah.
teaching tools now, right? And so that's what been most fulfilling to me, is to now be able to take all that stuff I learned, because the thing I try to share with folks is wisdom doesn't come from age. Wisdom comes from reflection. And I've been spending 18 years reflecting on the last 38 years, why I've made every decision I've ever made, what was causing the anger, the resentment, the pain, the hurt, the guilt. Did I have to live with it like these therapists said? Or can I actually get rid of it so I have the memory but no emotional connection to it? Am I able to look at the person who abused me with love and compassion rather than hate and resentment? Am I able to fully forgive and love without conditions? Am I able to be Christ? Not be
So,
like, be Christ,
mm,
which is to love unconditionally, which means without conditions.
that's a very, very hard thing for people to do. Being able to forgive other people who have harmed them in such extreme ways, and including being able to forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really wonder, like, what you did to be able to do that.
Yes. So now we can go back to those stories that
Mm-hmm.
you were sharing. So my abuse of women or towards
Mm-hmm.
women came from that time when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I didn't figure this out until I was 28. Okay. I was doing some really deep work at a forum called PSI seminars in San Francisco. And it was like a 4-day intensive you
Tell
versus you.
us
It's
what
like Landmark.
tell us what PSI is. I've done
Yeah,
them.
it's PSI is like Landmark. So for those of you who don't know what Landmark is, it's like this 4-day intensive you versus you created by Warner Earhart. PSI is their sister company. It's like yin and yang. They do the exact same thing. And I actually got gifted this 4-day experience by someone. Ike from Ike Sandwiches, if you guys know who that is.
Oh, okay.
Ike actually gifted me those 4 days because I heard that he was gifting it to people and I didn't have the money to go through it. So I went on his Facebook wall at the time before he blew up, and I wrote why he should sponsor me to go into that forum. And his sister Reem ended up calling me and saying Ike would like to sponsor you. And so that's how. But in that moment, is I was able to trace my issues with women back to that abandonment, right? So remember I said in the beginning, your mind takes a snapshot of whatever causes that trauma and then develops a strategy. So in that moment when I felt the worst that I ever felt at the time to an 8-year-old, that is horrible, right? Your mother and grandmother, the two women that you trusted the most, just seemingly giving you up. My mind took a snapshot, which was my mother and my grandmother, two women who said they loved me. So in that moment, at an unconscious level, my mind said, the women who love you will leave you. So what's the strategy to never feel this way again? Never trust a woman who says she loves you.
So you think you were
Now,
triggered by the word "I love you"?
absolutely.
Okay. The phrase.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I didn't realize, that now in my marriage at 18 years old, I'm fighting my mother, not her. And I'm causing the whole experience because of this belief to never trust a woman who says she loves you. I'm always thinking she's cheating, always, which produce the emotions of anger, rage, fear, jealousy. You run the gambit, which produce the action of abuse, which created the result of what? Her leaving. And then I go,
Yeah.
see, told you,
Yeah.
not realizing I was creating the whole
Right.
thing.
You're
So when
creating
I
the cycle.
realized this, I went to my mother. Here's the best part. I realized this. I go to my mother and I say, Ma, she was sober at the time. I said, I realized where all my issues with women came from. And I said, it went back to when you gave me up with dad. Why did you give me up? And my mom, being the Medea that she was, gun toting, weed smoking, Bible quoting, will cuss you out and say a prayer for you in the same sentence. My mom said, boy, what the is you talking about? I said, remember when you gave me up? When you didn't tell me that dad was coming, she said, what the hell are you talking about? She said, that is not what happened. I said, what do you mean that's not what happened? She says, I dropped you off with every intention to come back and pick you up. When I got back to get you, you were gone. Well, come to find out, my grandmother actually got tired of chasing behind my mother when it came to me and tracked my father down, helped him get custody behind my mother's back,
Ooh.
and then called my mother to drop me off and called him to come pick me up, which is why she just sat there. So my mother's telling me this story, and I verified it through my uncle who was living with my grandmother at the time, and I'm just sitting there like, wait, so you 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 saying my abandonment issues are based on a lie I told myself because I was too young to understand the situation? Whole life changed in that moment because I realized I was a 28-year-old man being run by an 8-year-old child.
Wow.
And that was the highest form of love that my grandmother could express at the time, is to try to get me to what she believed was a safer environment. So in that moment, my entire self-image changed. My view towards women changed. I no longer wanted to hurt. I just wanted to love. And so you ask me, how do I help my clients heal in hours what they can't do in years of therapy? It's because we put the child on trial.
Okay.
See, so many people are out here validating the child's accounts of a situation. And so let me be very clear. It's not that what the person is saying happened to them as a child, if it happened or not. It happened. Why they believe it happened and what they made it mean is what I'm questioning and putting on trial. Imagine a courtroom where the judge is 8 years old, the jury is 8 years old, the prosecutor is 8 years old, the eyewitness is 8 years old, and there's no defense attorney and no cross-examination allowed. How fair of a trial would that be?
Not at all. It'd be a nightmare.
So what we're talking about is people who have convicted themselves, judge, jury, and executioner, why they're not good enough, why they're not worthy, why they're not deserving, why they're this, why they're that, living with all of this trauma simply because at a very young age, they experience something. And what we know about children is they're young, emotional, don't have enough life experience to explain what's going on. They take everything personal.
Absolutely.
Right? They're highly self-centered, and rightfully so. Yeah. Right? And they're very black and white. With children, there is no gray. You either love me or you don't. You either like me or you hate me. There is no gray because they consciously can't compute that. How could you love me and do this to me at the same time? They can't compute that. So it's very black and white. So people have convicted themselves, judge, jury, and executioner, solely based on the eyewitness testimony of a child. No other perspectives included. So when people come to my office that I call the Belief Theory Court of Appeals, and I am defending on behalf of your self-image, I am challenging the ruling that you've made. So you come into my courtroom with all of your childhood stories, and I'm ripping your shit apart. Because there's so many other perspectives that are not being considered, like the adult perspective of the situation. And so the reason why, if something happened to you at 8 and you're 30 and you're still telling me the same story of what happened to you at 8 and you feel the same way as as when you were 8, it brings up the same, like it happened yesterday. That tells me you've never shifted your perspective. You're keeping the same, you're still seeing your parents and your childhood through a child's eyes as a 40-year-old man or woman. So I bring my clients into my office and they grow the fuck up.
I love it.
It's aggressive with a lot of love, so much love. But when they come to me, it's because they don't want to hold on to these perspectives anymore. They want to be challenged because it's not serving them. And all they need is a different perspective of what these situations meant. Because nothing in life has meaning except the meaning we choose to give it. That includes as a child. But there's so many different elements that create our memories as a child, but we're still only seeing it through our eyes, through the child's eyes. One of the challenging things as an adult, or just as a human being, is, and this is true for all of us, we judge other people solely based on their actions. But we judge ourselves based on our intentions for the exact same shit.
You never thought about that.
Someone cheats on you and you go, I hate you, you stupid bastard. You're the worst person in the world. You did this on purpose. You never respected me. You never loved me. You were always selfish, blah, blah, blah. We go off. We cheat on someone and we go, It's not what I meant. I was just feeling lonely and maybe I just need a vacation and it just kind of happened, right? For the same
Yeah.
thing. So I asked these folks when they're in my office, has your trauma as a child affected your parenting? They go, yes. So what are you going to tell your child when they grow up and say, you screwed me up? Let me guess. I did the best I could. How come you get that grace and your parents
Your
don't?
parents don't. Very true.
They also have childhoods with trauma that you know nothing about. They have beliefs about themselves that you know nothing about. They have value contradictions that you know nothing about. They have screwed up relationships with their parents that you know nothing about. But somehow they were supposed to figure it out. And you 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 didn't? You didn't need to figure it out. You just get the grace? And a lot of these new age parents, where a big, huge part of the resentment and judgment towards their parents come from, is the fact that they have all this information now about how to psychologically raise the children and this, that, and the other. That wasn't invented when your parents were born.
Yeah, there's no grace about that at all.
So it's unfair to judge them based on information you just now heard because of something called the internet.
Yeah.
You'd be doing the same thing they did to you or a version of it if the internet did not exist. So let me get off my soapbox because I can go for days.
No, I totally agree with you. And people got to hear it. They really do need to hear it.
But it's unnecessary because the identities that people currently are walking around with are false identities. Let me give an example. When a child is born, they have no idea they're even alive. They're unconscious. Straight out of the manufacturer. They're unconscious. Think about a baby picture of yourself. When was your earliest memory? Before that, you were just completely unconscious. You're just being.
Yeah.
You are straight out of the manufacturer. You are exactly how God designed human beings to be. And then one day, conscious awareness kicks in. It's like waking up out of a coma with amnesia. Can you imagine? How do you, if you woke up today with full blown amnesia, how would you ever figure out who you are? Well, I'd look at my driver's license. That'll tell you your name, but who are you? I'd look at pictures. That'll tell you where you've been and who you've been with, but who are you? And every time I give this exercise to a client, they go, well, I'll just ask the people around me. I say, exactly. What do you think every child goes through? They wake up and all of it's like, okay, who am I? What am I? Where am I? Who are you? Who am I? That's the innate question that every single child, every person is asking until the day they die. Who am I? Well, because this child at 5, 6 years old has nothing to pull from, they rely on the people around them. So when my wife got her master's degree in psychology, she had to write a thesis, pick a problem, pose a question, do a bunch of research, come up with a conclusion, and then your thesis is your conclusion and all your research and cited sources. Every single person has a sentence that's running them, a decision that they made about themselves at a very early age. And that's their thesis on themselves. Because when the question becomes, who am I? The research and cited sources is your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brothers, your grandma, everyone around you, the relationships, how you're being treated, what you're being taught. All of that is your research and cited sources to where one day when you get enough information, you make a decision. This is who I am. This is what I deserve. This is what I'm capable of. This is what I can and cannot do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm listening to you and reflecting at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
85% of what you believe about yourself and your place in the world, you decided by the time you were 14 years old.
That makes sense.
So most of the adults that you meet are really just grown ass children. They got longer arms and longer legs, but they're still operating based on the emotions or the decisions that a 14-year-old child made, which is why they still do childish shit. Someone wants to leave you and then you fall out, I'm going to kill myself. Grown people don't do that, but children do. And then people get hardened into their realities because remember that self-fulfilling prophecy that I said, that I showed earlier about they do that over and over and over again. And because they keep going through different doors and coming out of the same exit, they think this is life.
It's life, yeah.
And it's not. It's just the reality that you are unconsciously creating. The reason why I'm saying unconsciously creating is because every thought you think produces a result. Every belief you have produces a result. Every emotion you feel produces a result. Every value you have produces a result. Every commitment you have produces a result. But when you are unaware of these things, of what's actually creating your reality, you create it unconsciously and then play victim to your own creation.
Right.
Because you don't know you created it.
Right. We
Or
swear
how
it's
you
the whole
created it.
world outside and never think about what we believe about ourselves and how that shows up every day.
This is why I believe the story in the Bible about Adam and Eve is an allegory for self-awareness. Because everything that Adam and Eve went through, so does a child. They go from unconscious direct connection with God, just being, not even knowing they're alive, to I'm naked. Shame, guilt, everything else. Now they're aware of themselves. In the Bible, it says God went looking for Adam and says, where are you? And Adam is shielded and clothed. Well, don't children do that? They go from running around naked to all of a sudden, close the door. Don't look at me. They became aware. Every child goes through exactly what Adam and Eve went through. We call it the fall from grace. The state of just being to now self-awareness.
No, I've never heard it put like that. That's pretty powerful.
Which is where all of the challenges begin. Because now, when you become self-aware, you have no idea who or what you are. So then the world goes, well, let me tell you, Chanel, you're black. So let me tell you what that means about you. You're a woman. Let me tell you what that means about you. You're a black woman from England. Let me tell you what that means about you. You're this height. Let me tell you what that means about you. You have this kind of facial features. Let me tell you what that means about you. This is where you come from. Let me tell you what that means about you. This is the religion that you are. Let me tell you what that means about you. Your identity is given to you. It's not one that you consciously chose.
And then there's the whole thing about accepting it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So imagine you wake up today with full-blown amnesia as a 18-year-old woman that you are, right?
I'll take it.
Right? You wake up today with full-blown amnesia and you have to rely on other people's opinions of you to try to figure out who you are. Now imagine if 9 out of 10 people come up to you and says, you're the most horrible person we ever met. You were vindictive. You were selfish. You were a liar, a cheat, a steal. And everyone you meet for the next year, this is what they say to you. At some point, you're going to accept it. Because too many people have been saying the same thing about you and treating you a certain way. So it must be true. If you tell a lie long enough, people begin to believe it. And for someone to say, oh, I'm not good enough, or try to prove that they are good enough, they first have to accept the fact that they believe they're not good enough. And where does that come from? Other people's opinions.
Yeah.
Of you. I heard someone say, and I can't remember who said it, but it says a lot of your self-image was built from your parents' bad days. Because I was fine. Just the way I was until you told me the way I was wasn't safe. I didn't know what failure was or if it was a bad thing. I just know I did shit until I got tired of it. And then I moved on to the next thing. And then you tell me that's failing. That's quitting. No, I just got tired of it. But now you're telling me I'm a bad human being for wanting to change directions. But that's what children do. I'm straight up. That's my nature. I want to change who I am. And you tell me a tiger can't change his stripes or whatever bullshit they say. Mm-hmm. So now I want to be this one day and I want to be this the next day, but now that's not good. I'm curious, but now you're forcing me to make conclusions. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the transition from non-awareness or unconsciousness to consciousness is where the downfall of most people begin. Because when you're a child, you're open, you're free, you're curious. But then your parents tell you you can't be like that in society, honey. Because here are the standards that someone else made up with their own agenda that we all need to live up to in order to be considered a good wife, a good husband, a good man, a good woman. No wonder people are running around depressed. Yeah. I read in the book, Happy Pocket Full of Money, he said, depression comes from suppression of the soul's desires. Joy comes from within. And joy comes from your soul speaking and you listening and executing. That's why children are so joyous. It's also the reason why Jesus said that the kingdom belongs to the children, because the kingdom is not a place. It's a state of being.
Being, yes.
It's a state of being that we can clearly see on children's face. So he said, in order to enter the kingdom, you first must become childlike again. Not childish. Mm-hmm. Childlike. I wrote a blog on this about what it means to be childlike again. And I said, I listed all the characteristics of a child. What would your life look like if this is who you went back to being? Go back to who you were before the world puts all its bullshit on you. These are the conversations that I have with people to help them heal. There's nothing wrong with you other than the fact that you believe something's wrong with you. Right. And society has caused you to believe that something is wrong with you. And I'm here to tell you that they're the ones that's full of shit. Not you. You are perfect. Just the way you are. You were born whole and complete. Stop looking to become whole and complete. You were already whole and complete the day you were conceived. And then something happened and you had the thought that you weren't whole and complete. And now you go out into the world looking for the piece that you thought you were missing. It's like walking around looking for your glasses and they've been sitting on your head the entire time.
Yeah. And you're so tunnel vision, you just miss everything out of where you're focused on.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
So that's why we talk about the ego, the false self. The false self is happens the day you become consciously aware of your own self and then start looking for who you are out there through other people's opinions. That is when the false self begins. Because now you feel like you're now going out into the world from a deficit. Oh, I wasn't good enough to begin with. Apparently, look at my family history. Look at everything they do to black people. Look at everything they do to women. Look at everything. Apparently, I wasn't good enough to fucking start with. So now they go into the world in a deficit. We're perfect, whole, and complete, just as we are. But guilt and shame and all these things have been used to keep you from seeing your divinity.
So that makes me want to ask you, I feel like the way you talk about biblical scriptures comes from a metaphysical point of view.
Absolutely.
And so how does that work in with belief theory? So because when I first heard belief theory, I thought it was based on the Bible, but now listening to you talk, it sounds more like about what you believe about yourself. Am I on the right track?
So organized religion is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
It
okay,
is.
I love it.
To me, it's hilarious because
okay.
Christians don't even read the book that they supposedly worship so much. They get so enamored by the stories of what Jesus did and he walked on water and healed the sick and this, that, and the other that they actually never pay attention to what Jesus said. Can I read something to you?
Come on now, read.
Let me grab this real quick. I'm glad you're recording this. So right here in Psalm 82. Now, let me make this clear. I know the history behind this book. So I don't take it literal. But I understand that's where a lot of people's belief system is. And there's some really plain language in here that people are missing.
Absolutely.
I have said, ye are gods, and all are children of the Most High. That's Psalm 82. Now let's go to John 34. John 10, chapter 34. Or excuse me, John chapter 10, verse 34. And Jesus answered him. This is when they was about to stone him for saying, I and my Father are one. We're going to talk about that in a second. And Jesus said, is it not written in your law, I said ye are gods? If he called them gods, unto whom did the word of God came? Jesus said, excuse me. He said, is it not written in the law, your law, ye are gods with a small g, not big G. Never said that you were the creator of all things, but you are the creator of your own reality. You have 6 mental faculties: perception, will, reason, intuition, imagination, and memory. You are the only creature on the planet that has all 6 of those faculties to be able to create whatever reality you decide to create. And on top of that, you are the only one who is aware of itself. So that is what makes you God with a small g, not big G. Not creator of all things, but in your little ass world, you create everything. He said, isn't it written in your law, I said ye are gods? He says, And if he was talking to them, who the fuck do you think them was? Who else is them? Who else was he talking to? The cats? The birds? The trees? He was talking to you. Yeah. So it's amazing to me how people have been conditioned to not see themselves as God. When it's written in this book, very first chapter, let us make man in our own image. What image is that? What image is that? God saying, let us make man in our own image, meaning you were made in the image of God. You think it's your physical abilities? Absolutely not. There's a reason why I have a picture of a lion behind me. It's the attitude. It's the knowingness. The lion is not the biggest animal, the strongest animal, the fastest animal. It's not the smartest animal. But the lion knows who he is, and he runs shit. So it's his attitude. When the lion looks at an elephant, he sees lunch. When an elephant looks at a lion, he says, oh shit, I'm lunch. Mm-hmm. It's attitude. So that's number 2. But then Moses goes to the top of the hill. This is why I'm really about to blow you away. Moses goes to the top of the hill and asks God, who should I tell them sent me? Why are you asking God, who should I tell them? Why are you asking God for his name? Ain't his name God? No, his name is not God.
His name
God is a description. He said, tell them I am sent me. I am who? I am what? I am that I am. Now, what words do you use to describe yourself every time you go to tell yourself you go to explain yourself or describe yourself to someone? The first 2 words is I am. So God made you in his image, told you his name was I am. You utter the words I am every time you go to describe yourself. So every time you say those 2 words, whether you recognize it or not, you are recognizing that you are God and that you are about to create. I am a procrastinator. Great. What do procrastinators do? He says, I am that I am. He didn't say, I am that I am everything that's positive and works. No, he says, you have free will to create yourself into whoever in the hell you want to be. And all you have to do is use the words, I am. That's why Jesus walked around and said, let the weak man say, I am strong.
Strong. Wow. Wow.
So they don't read this because what Jesus was trying to show them was, why are you impressed by me? I'm just trying to show you what you could do. And they killed him for it.
But even though those are so interesting because those scriptures get used a lot, but they get used in such an off context.
This book is written in such ambiguity, it could be used to empower or enslave.
And then the fear aspect as well, because, it's seen as blasphemous to say that I'm God.
Yeah.
Even though it says that you are God. So it's
that's the interesting part, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why he said, isn't it written in your law? You can go, the whole New Testament is riddled with self-image.
Mm-hmm.
When God sent the 12, when Moses sent the 12 to go spy on, the land of milk and honey, 10 of them came back and said, we were like of grasshoppers to them. And Moses said, how you know? You talked to them? They was like, nah. But he said, so how you know they saw you as grasshoppers? That's how you see yourself, through their eyes. Self-image is not what I think of me. It's not what you think of me. It's what I think you think of me. Self-image is seeing yourself through other people's eyes. But Caleb and Joshua came back and was just like, oh, they ain't nothing. We took some of their grapes. And God said, send them. They have the right attitude. The whole damn thing is about self-image. But people are too caught up in the Sunday stories to actually read what was said. And you can actually read what was said, But your mind cannot accept ideas that is not incongruent with your belief system. So you can
Yes.
read that line and reject it because of your belief system, what was put there first. So what do we say? What do you hear a lot in Christian circles? I'm not worthy. Bullshit. My name is I am.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't be seeing me repeat I'm not worthy. That's a trance. Why would I keep repeating that? So
Wow.
anyway, let me get off my
Yeah.
soapbox. When
No,
you
that's
discover the truth about you,
yes.
then you also discover the truth about everyone else. The reason why he could say, I and my Father are one. And it's the same for you, Chanel, and everyone else listening. You and your Father are one. Father just meaning creator of all things. You can call it whatever you want. But what we're talking about is consciousness. And that's where the metaphysical part comes in. We're talking about consciousness. The fact that you are even aware that you are alive, that's consciousness. That is not your body. That is not your brain. That's the version of you that's observing all of it. That's me seeing the sun, my street right here, full of sunlight, and then going, it's separate from the actual sun because I can't see the stream. I can't see the whole beam. So the light that's down here must be different from the light that's up there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So because we can't trace consciousness, then we automatically separate ourselves from the source. What is consciousness other than the breath of God? What is consciousness other than sunbeam from the sun? Which means I'm not separate. I'm fully connected and we are one.
Wow. Wow, you laid a lot on me. I'm gonna be I'm gonna be re-listening to this and re-listening to this and like taking notes. That's incredible. Can you tell the peoples how they can just give us information on belief theory, how they can get involved in your program?
Yeah, so we recently went through a splitting of branding. So if they want to find Steve Bacon, they can come to coachstevebacon.com.
Okay.
Um, we needed to separate Steve Bacon from Belief Theory. So I'm still the founder of Belief Theory, but now my
Okay.
wife is the CEO because Belief Theory itself was meant for the community. It
Okay.
is us putting on classes and hiring other coaches and teachers to then go give to educate Black and Brown communities on identity and self-image and communication and relationships. And it's all based on curriculum that I've created. Um, so we needed to, but it was starting to become more Steve Bacon than belief theory.
Okay.
So I needed to separate my own personal coaching and branding from it. So to find me and how you can work with me, you're going to go to coachstevebacon.com. If you're interested in the work that we do with the community, we're rebuilding that website right now. And you can go to belieftheory.com for that.
It's amazing. Okay. Wow. Thank you so much for for being here, sharing your personal deep transformation because it cannot be easy to be able to talk about the things where you failed and what you struggled through, but it's just so powerful for you to share how you overcame that and that you're able to help other people in their journeys.
Absolutely. Can I share this last thing for you? Because I think
Yeah.
what you do is so incredible and what you decided to embark on. I want to leave you with this last little story because it's about you. This story's about you.
Okay. Okay.
There was a man walking through the woods, and he tripped and fell into a deep, dark hole. And he started screaming for help. Help, help, help. Someone help. A lady walks up to the edge of the hole and she says, "Sir, are you okay?" He says, "No, I'm stuck in this hole and I'm starting to feel really depressed and I don't think I'm ever going to get out, and I'm really stuck down in here." And she says, "Okay, I'll help you." And she pulls up a chair and she starts her watch and she says, "Luckily for you, I'm a therapist." She says, "Tell me, how does being down in this hole relate to your childhood?" And he looks at her and goes, "What the fuck are you talking about, lady? Just help me get out." And she says, that's not going to help you being, resistant. So she opens him up. He starts reliving all these terrible memories. She gives him a few tools on how to cope and just deal with the fact that these things happened. And then her watch goes off. And she says, "Well, that's my time. Listen, if you're still stuck in here next week, I'll swing back around and we'll pick up where we left off." And she leaves. Now, this dude is left in shambles. He has no idea what to do. He just relived all these traumatic memories. And she left him in that space. But he musters up enough courage to start yelling for help again. This time a man pulls up. He says, "Son, are you okay?" He says, "No." And he tells him about the last experience with the last lady. And now all the emotions he's feeling because of that. And the man says, "Well, luckily for you, I'm a doctor." And he says, "I'm going to write you a prescription for these pills that'll help you with all these emotions that you're feeling." He says, "When you get out of this hole, take this medication and it'll help you feel better. And when you run out, let me know. I'll get you some more." And he leaves. The man is still in the hole. He has no idea how to get out. So he starts to give up. And then all of a sudden he hears his voice. "Hey, are you okay?" The man says, "No, I'm not. I really just don't think I'm stuck down here, and I just don't think I'm ever going to get out." And before he can get out the next sentence, Chanel jumps down in the hole. And the man looks at Chanel and says, "Are you an idiot? Didn't I just tell you I was stuck down here?" And Chanel goes, "Yeah, you did. And I was stuck down here last week, and I figured out how to get out. Let me show you." Lived experience is the most powerful education that exists on the planet. What you've gone through, every lesson you learn, the way you've mustered up the courage to turn your experience into a podcast to help other people, the work you're doing on yourself, that makes you qualified than the most educated therapists and psychologists on the planet. You are the savior of the world. And I wanted you to hear that story to show you what you are doing for people. And that I am grateful, and I will support you every step of the way.
That means a lot. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been such an experience, and I'm just so grateful. So I'm actually at a little bit of a loss for words, and that doesn't happen very often. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we can do this again down the road sometime.
Anytime. Take care.
All right. Take care.